If everybody could take their seats, we want to get started. We're trying to stay on schedule. So I'm just going to make this short and sweet. I just want to introduce Graham Pardun, and Graham is now going to push our buttons.
Thanks, Sherry. For reasons of style, I made this sound like I knew what I was talking about. Huh? Sure. Oh, I'm not that tall. Okay. Yeah, I made it sound like I knew what I was talking about, but I want you to hear it as one big question. Okay. When the wanderers are made whole again and holy of earth, let them be lost no more. Okay, that's the title for this talk. I write everything out and I read it word for word. That's what I do. I'm very shy and very obsessive about language, so I write it all out. Okay, that's the title for this talk, which is supposed to be about poetry. And my epigraph is this from Nikolai Berdyaev's Ethics of Creativity. He says, our religious life is still full of idolatry, and to get rid of it is a great moral task. Creativity is, by its very nature, opposed to idolatry, and therein lies its great significance. Okay, I think that says it all right there, but I will keep talking. And what I want to say right away also from my heart, so you know where I'm coming from, is this. I used to know how to have a relationship with Jesus. Now I don't know how to have a relationship with Jesus anymore. That's the problem. And I know I'm not alone in this. And I know I'm not alone in saying either we need to return to the earth, its yellow sun and green trees, and we need to come home to one another, human face to human face. That's the problem also. And in my mind, which is a strange mind, I'm starting to realize, in my mind, those are two different ways of expressing one and the same problem, but even just to see them as a unity is itself a departure from, I was going to say betrayal, that's what it says right here, betrayal. I'm going to tone it down. Departure from Christian orthodoxy, it seems. And so the place where I most love to search for answers is not so much sacred tradition as wilderness, wandering among the shimmering but harsh oases of the rebel poets. And I do like to push buttons, but it's a question. The indigenous American theologian Vine Deloria Jr., Standing Rock Sioux, said in his book, God is Red, that there's something inherent in Christianity as a spiritual culture which makes the earth itself, its bright flowers and fragrant grass, its white clouds and moss and flowing streams, feel ultimately unreal. He says, while Christianity can project the reality of the afterlife, time and eternity, it appears to be incapable of providing any reality to the life in which we are here and now presently engaged, space and the planet Earth. He says this has to do with situating ourselves more fully in history than in space. Our sense of Christian identity as universally and abstractly, not just tribally and ecologically real, coming not so much from our place on earth, the mesh of our relationships with the other living things of earth, but from our position within an inherited but not bodily experienced narrative arc from creation to apocalypse. Everybody doing okay so far? Yeah, all right. If time becomes our primary consideration, he says, another quote here, we never seem to arrive at the reality of our existence in places, but instead are always directed to experiential interpretations rather than to the experiences themselves. Paul of Tarsus, Paul von der Tarsus, who, like every generation of Christians in the 2,000 years following after him, thought the apocalypse would happen in his own lifetime, said, this is from 1 Corinthians, the appointed time has grown very short. From now on, let those who have wives live as though they had none, and those who mourn as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing, and those who buy as though they had no goods, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it. For the present form of this world is passing away. Married life, the joys and sorrows of normal human time, the birth and loss of children, showers of sunshine and rain falling from the sky, the bloom and death of plants under the cycles of sun and moon and stars, the usual flows of buying and selling, of sowing and reaping, of weaving cloth, throwing pots, and chopping wood. The entire elemental tapestry of whatever you think your life here on earth is made of, it will soon unravel, Paul says. It's already unreal, passing away. Whether or not you yourself can see its fraying edges or hear it all begin to snap. So set your mind on things that are above. This is in Colossians, not on things that are on earth. And now from the retrospective of our Holocene-era omni-collapse of once flourishing ecosystems, this derelict world of ours in which seabirds dying of starvation, their stomachs full of our plastic trash, and precious human beings living in tent cities of trash as if washed up on the endless seashores of concrete at the end of time, are literally two of the most peripheral of our many concerns. We can say that in addition to Paul's, from now on, let those who have wives live as though they had none, we've been acting lately as if he'd also said, from now on, let those who have planets live as though they actually belong to the emptiness of outer space. It is absolutely no accident, says the unorthodox poet theologian Philip Sherrard, that a purely materialistic view of nature first arose not within the Hindu, Buddhist, or Islamic world, but within the Christian world. Sherrard's argument is it all began with the doctrine of creation ex nihilo, creation out of nothing, a fabrication of the church fathers, which subverts the poetry of the Hebrews' prophetic vision in favor of a logically clean but artistically dead total abstraction. A vast black emptiness, akin to what we might now imagine as outer space, floating, as it were, quote-unquote, face-to-face with a quote-unquote God who is absolutely unrelated to it, but who has the power to make things appear from within it as if by a kind of proto-technological magic. Imagine the blackness of a smartphone before you touch it. You're the God in their scenario, and it's the world. As soon as you say fiat lux with your Sistine Chapel finger. And that says something about why our relationship to earth has become like digital addicts sitting in the sunshine and grass, but doom scrolling pixels of narcissistic light. Amen. Yeah. The ancient Hebrew poetry of the Bible has its own vision of creation, which is not only incompatible with, but fiercely opposed to, that of the body-escaping, farewell to earth saying Platonists. Okay, I'm back to bashing Platonism. I oscillate. I'm back to bashing Platonism. Okay. Your breath has been our home, the refuge on which our watchful eyes rest in the circle of the ages. Before the mountains issued forth in travail, before you danced forth the earth and the lush places of abundant flow, in blissful twists of agony from age to age, you are the highest one. You return man to the trampled dust, calling out, "Return, O children of Adam." For 1,000 years of tooth and nail under your careful watch are like a single day slashed off from the present, a passing dream. They gush away. They vanish like sleep, sprouting like grass in the morning, at dawn blossoming like hay slashed down in the evening and left out to dry. We're exhausted. We're annihilated. We're eaten up in the oven, flaring forth from your nostrils. We flow away under your scorching blaze of sunlight. That's the first part of my translation of Psalm 90. I think it came out pretty good. I think it's good. I mean, because I wrote it. I think it's good. No, it's good. I like my stuff. Because it's vivid, it's earthy. You can see and almost smell and touch real stuff you yourself have experienced in your own body as you hear it. Refuge, breath, sunlit dust, grass, meadows blooming, the blade of a scythe slashing them away, dancing, writhing, gushing, scorching blazes of sunlight. And the reason why it's so vivid is that the Hebrew itself is. All these images are really there, not created ex nihilo by me, but they do require some significant creative work to bring them out into our English daylight. The doctrines of the world's religions, laments Vine Delory Jr., who was once a Christian seminarian, by the way. The doctrines of the world religions, expressed in the most precise phrases and elaborate concepts, with every nuance of meaning represented by weighty tomes, describe virtually nothing. I have that same lament. I can't stand theology. No offense. But I think the poetry of the Hebrew Psalms emerges from this kind of critique of meaningless abstraction, not only totally unscathed, but even melodically triumphant. They are definitely describing something. The something. The one and only thing there is for us to describe in the first place, what it's like to live as a body of humans together on this harsh but beautiful earth. Sprouting like grass in the morning, at dawn blossoming like hay, slashed down in the evening, and left out to dry. Any human at all, religious or not, who is willing to feel in his or her human body the vast, horrific, and overwhelmingly lovely and tender tragedy of walking about on earth among the other earthborn, face to face under the sun, as a beautiful but passing human constellation of dust, can recognize this supremely bullshitless psalm of Moses in his or her own heart effortlessly. That was pretty good. I'm going to say that again. Can recognize this supremely bullshitless psalm of Moses. That's good, man. I like that. In his or her own heart effortlessly, frictionlessly. No requirement to first, quote unquote, believe in anything, which is one of the divine powers that true poetry has, that even true theology, if there is such a thing, doesn't. But what I want to focus on in Psalm is one constellation of vivid bodily images in particular. Before the mountains issued forth in travail, before you danced forth the earth and the lush places of abundant flow, in blissful twists of agony from age to age, you are the highest one. Okay, a more conventional way to translate Psalm 90, verse 2, would have been something like, before the mountains were brought forth. That's translating the Hebrew word yalad. Before you formed the earth and the world. Formed would be the translation of whole. Okay, that's the ESV, which is just terrible. No offense. Actually, I don't care. Offense. No, which is just terrible. No, it's all right. If I may say so, sucking the life force out of the underlying Hebrew and leaving the brittle shell of a distant memory in its place. Good, maybe, for left hemisphere dominant, anxious, control-seeking, theological overthinkers, because more susceptible to their tidy and therefore vacuous systems of thought, but useless for people like us longing to become fully embodied human beings again, with feet standing firmly on the planet, dealing with the reality of planetary life again, face to face. Yalad means to give birth, and it's used that way a lot in the King James Version. I'm not making up these meanings. Hol means to twist or to whirl, to dance, to writhe, or to be in anguish, metaphorically. So the poetic image here in the psalm is obviously of the Creator as a mother in the agony of giving birth, moving around simultaneously in ecstasy and pain as a kind of dancing forth her child, the earth and all its many life forms, into existence. Everybody doing all right? We're good? Okay. This is a very different way to think about what earth is than to think about creation ex nihilo. The men who set Christian thought and feeling on their main trajectories, the trajectories that would in time lead to, as Sherrard says, a purely materialistic view of nature, the disenchanted cosmos we're thinking about waking up from now, in the aftermath of Christianity, seem to have been mostly childless male individuals who kept themselves as far away from the hardcore, earthly, mammalian, biological, warm-blooded realities of childbirth and child-rearing, as they kept the bloodless God of their own imaginations. Better that everything come from some nothing that doesn't mean anything than everything come from the wet darkness of a womb. Good Lord. Thus, when St. Simeon, the new theologian, says as recently as the 11th century, that I'm Orthodox, that's recent. 11th century, that's recent. Thus, when St. Simeon, the new theologian, says as recently as the 11th century, the whole creation, after it shall burn up in the divine fire, is to be changed, that there may be fulfilled also the prophecy of David, who says that, quote, the righteous shall inherit the earth, end quote. Of course, Simeon says, of course, not the sensuous earth, the earth that we can touch with our bodily senses. For how is it possible that those who have become spiritual will inherit a sensuous earth? No, they will inherit a spiritual and immaterial earth, so as to have on it a dwelling worthy of their glory after they shall be vouchsafed to receive bodies that are bodiless and above every sense. This totally relaxed sense of ease by which Simeon says, of course, not the sensuous earth, this easy way in which he takes the psalm to mean literally its own exact opposite. Yes, the righteous shall inherit the earth, but not like the earth. Comes to him. I was kind of sarcastic when I was writing this. Comes to him by way of 1,000 years of ascetics already living above the flux of nature in the iridescent Minecraft utopia of their male but emasculated daydreams. Right? Okay. Rather than, that's maybe a little harsh, rather than, as Vine Deloria Jr. says, the life in which we are here and now presently engaged, space and the planet Earth. The real planet Earth, the one we can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, here and now together with the senses of our human bodies of clay, which is what those senses are for. The language of a religionized Christianity, says another unorthodox Orthodox theologian, Christos Ioannaris, in his book, Against Religion, which is wonderful. And just to be clear, by a religionized Christianity, he just means Christianity. Christianity as we know it, especially his and my Eastern Orthodoxy, is like his main target. The language of a religionized Christianity lacks an ontological backbone, he says. It swings to and fro in the absence of any reality corresponding to it. It refers to psychological substitutes for the real. Its symbolism points to sentimental assumptions. Its images reflect strictly individual emotional sensitivities. Sentimental suggestiveness is reckoned as real experience. What is especially valued, Yanara says, is a tendency toward mystical states, a saccharine vocabulary and bearing, a theatrical show of rapture or of humility. And what charms is religious addresses of lyrical sensitivity, words full of feeling, rhetorical flights of fervor. And as a rule, all this theatrical behavior has an egocentric and narcissistic character. It operates with the dynamics of satisfying the self, of shoring up the ego. Crucially, these psychological states do not arise out of participation in relations of communion, he goes on to say. And this is really important. This is heavy, man. This is it right here. These psychological states do not arise out of participation in relations of communion. They lie rather at the opposite pole to shared experience. They are individualistic phenomena that insulate one from the dynamics of relation, that imprison one in an egotistic interiority. So it's not just that the saccharine, self-absorbed, cliched language of sentimental Christian religiosity is an unfortunate misuse or even abuse of our human tongue and breath, when it would have been better just to sit there in silence and listen to God's own breath of wind moving through the trees. It's rather that this kind of failure of language itself imprisons its users inside their own heads, which is the opposite of salvation or renewed wholeness. The restless but lazy housefly of existential angst, so to speak, allured into a place both sticky and pink by the sweet, sweet smell of easy words about God and infinity and so on, only to be crushed inside the green jaws of the overblown Venus flytrap of the ego. My soul takes wing during worship. I go into myself and, despite my weakness, see with the eyes of my soul the unchanging light of his truth. Those are two of the many, many, many such examples that Yanara cites of the narcissistic, cliched spiritual language so typical of what's become of Christianity, even in the supposedly deeper and more authentic East. Astonishingly, he points out that in the entire Philokalia, which triggered a major spiritual renaissance in Russia when it was published there in the late 18th century, then popularized in the anonymous and perhaps fictional travelogue, The Way of the Pilgrim, popularized in the U.S. by J.D. Salinger's Franny and Zoe. In this entire 5-volume collection of Eastern monastic texts, composed over a span of more than 1,000 years, there is, Yanara says, quote, not even a hint, end quote, that salvation has anything to do with participation in the life of other people, much less with any form of life here on earth, any other form of life here on earth. Not even a hint. The goal of the Philokalia's contemplation, he says, is presented as purely individualistic if the mind descends into the heart. With the persistent individual practice of asceticism, a person has been saved. Nothing else is needed. There is no need for participation in a body of relations of loving communion. The aim is not to share in existence and life. The death of Christianity is the death of these kinds of dead-end spiritual but self-absorbed, self-isolating ways of talking about the world. Nothing more, but also nothing less. Perhaps nothing shapes our experience of reality more than how we talk about it together. And so here we are together, working on that. And so the way forward, as I see it, is not just to fall back even harder on the traditional language games of a now long evaporated Christian world order. It's just they're how we got here in the first place. The way forward is very intentionally re-embodied, de-abstracted, in-person only communal practice in groups both small and circular enough for everyone to relate to one another face to face. Think Estuary. Think Lord's Supper as real meal at actual dinner tables. It's that, but crucially also practices like these, nurtured by, imbued by, haloed by, as if by a mane of fire, the kind of lion-hearted, visionary recklessness that's absolutely relentless at searching for new living language, in the place where new living language has always sprung forth for poets who have thirsted hard enough for it in the first place. The living earth itself, which sprang forth, as it were, from the womb of Yah at his beautiful word, Yehi, let there be. And in honor of that future yet to dawn, I wish to share my translation of Psalm 104, beginning in verse 10. I want to appreciate how it resituates humans right here where we already are, which is right here where we belong, down at eye level with all the weeds of earth, this earth, the one we can touch with the senses of our body, this body, face to face in relation with the rest of God's creatures who are living down here with us also as they were created to. All right. Well. Okay. You send forth springs gushing from the wadis, which run between the hills, letting every living thing in the fields drink their fill. The wild asses quench their thirst. The creatures of the sky are coming to dwell along the waters. Look, they're singing from among the branches. He's letting the hillsides drink from his lofty ascent, quenching the earth with the fruitfulness of his works. He springs up grass for all the lumbering beasts, and the aromatic herbs and grasses of the field as Adam's servants, that he might bring forth bread from the earth, and wine to make our hearts rejoice, oil to make our faces shine, bread to refresh and strengthen our hearts. The trees of Yah are overflowing, the cedars of Lebanon, which he planted himself, where the birds of sunrise make their nests, and the bird that bows her neck in loving kindness. Her home is in the cypresses too, where high mountains are a refuge for gazelles, and the cliff towers for the hyrax. He appointed the moon to keep the seasons. The sun knows his gateway in the west, so profoundly so. When you lay down in the darkness, it becomes night, and all the wild beasts of the forest trample about. The lion cubs roaring after their prey, seeking their food from the high one. The sun rises again, so that they gather themselves up and lay down, all stretched out and at rest again, in their own little temples of rock. And Adam goes forth to his work and to his service until the evening. O Yah, how manifold are your works! In wisdom you made them all. The earth overflows with all your treasures, just as the sea, great and wide, splashes with numberless living things, both small and great. There stroll the ships. There's Leviathan, that serpentine wreath of chaos, whom you made just to laugh and play with. Everything watches you with patient expectation, to give them their food in due season. When you give, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they overflow with good. When you hide your face, their insides flow away. You gather up their breath, they breathe their last and return to their dust. Then you send forth your breath, filling them with life again, renewing the face of the earth. Yes, the radiance of Yah shall outlast the horizon. Yah shall find joy in all his works, the one who gazes at the earth and it trembles, who touches the mountains and they smoke. I will sing to Yah as long as I live. I'll keep plucking songs for the highest one again and again, for it's sweet to be swept away in my thoughts of him. Yes, Yah will be my joy when the wanderers are made whole again and holy of earth. Let them be lost no more. Thanks.
Wow. Can we become best friends, Graham? This is the first time Graham and I have hung out. We had to come here to hang out. Let's do it. So now we're going to move on to Karen.